Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yunji Denise and Ryan Kalei-Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Well, aloha and thank you for being here this morning. I'm Yunji Denise, joined by Ryan Kalei-Suji. This is Spotlight Hawaii on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. Today, Ryan, we are focusing the spotlight on education.
That's right. We're going to be checking in with the newly named superintendent of the Department of Education. Joining us this morning is Superintendent Keith Hayashi. Good morning, sir. Thanks so much for being here this morning.
Good morning, Yunji. Good morning, Ryan. It's great to be here.
You know, the last time we spoke to you, you were in that interim role, but after a somewhat lengthy process, you remained in your position as superintendent and actually elevated into that full-time position. Talk about how things have been for the first few months now that you have kind of transitioned into this full-time role.
Yeah, it's been great. You know, our schools have continued to do what we need to do to meet the needs of our students, you know, engaging our kids during the summer. The work doesn't stop, you know, it continues, and really fortunate to have great school leaders and leaders at all levels within our department and stakeholders that are supporting our efforts in what we're doing. You know, so it's been wonderful. I'm excited in the permanent position to move forward and continue our efforts to meet the needs of our students.
You know, one of the areas that has had a lot of issues, or a lot of controversy rather, is the decision by the DOE to maintain masking on campuses, indoors at least. Can you talk a little bit about that decision and what you are anticipating for the fall?
Sure. You know, everything that we do is focused on student safety. Throughout the summer, we've maintained our existing COVID-19 health and safety guidance, you know, which includes universal indoor masking at all school facilities. Based on our current conditions and guidance, this aligns with our ongoing priority of maintaining in-person learning for our students, you know, which has been our focus from the very beginning. You know, if indoor masking is implemented, you know, per the Department of Health, you know, our close contact identification, notification, and quarantining of campuses are not required. You know, we want to continue to ensure that we keep our students in school and learning. And so, you know, we anticipate meeting with the Department of Health next month, though, you know, for continued meetings and guidance for the upcoming school year. We've continued to work very closely with DOH since the beginning of the pandemic, and the partnership has kept our schools safe and open for in-person learning throughout the pandemic. So again, you know, thanks to the Department of Health for that great collaboration. You know, as we maintain that cautious transition back to normal, we continue to rely on their guidance and our local health officials.
And so at this point, just to clarify, you folks have not made a decision yet about masking entering into the fall again. That is, you're saying it's the decision that will need to be made later with the Department of Health?
Right. We will be meeting with them to take a look at what that guidance is going to be for the upcoming school year. We're definitely monitoring the trends that's happening, you know, throughout the state. And as we get closer to the opening of the school year, probably in July, we'll be meeting with early July to provide our schools with the guidance. Again, ensuring and focusing on health and safety of our students being the number one priority.
We know that COVID has been such a challenge, you know, especially when it comes to a lot of workers in all fields have been calling out sick because of the spike that we're seeing in cases. How has that currently impacted teachers and what you're seeing in staffing? Are the masks rather making a difference when it comes to being able to have summer programs and do the work that needs to be done right now?
I think it is. You know, the masking combined with testing has kept our students in school and actively participating in the summer offerings that we do have. As we learn, and again, we're working with DOH, that the it's not just the masking, but we want to ensure that students are testing. And so we have provided tests for our students and staff, through the schools, which is definitely important.
When you look at how COVID-19 has impacted just all sorts of areas, including, of course, what you're doing at the Department of Education, it also is impacting budgets and really altering the way in which people have to plan for budgeting issues, whether it be for testing, for PPE, and other things that are helping to keep people safe. How has the overall budget of the department been impacted by COVID-19? And is that anything that's coming out of the overall system budget, or have you been able to receive federal support through some of the preventative measures that you're speaking of that are important for the safety of our students?
We've been very fortunate that both the legislature and the governor has been very supportive in allocating the funds that we need to continue to address the needs of our students. In addition to that, we do have federal ESSER funding that has, over the last several years, most recently, American Rescue ARP funding for our students, and that federal support to help us address the impacts from the pandemic has been very helpful. And those funds are there for us to use to support our schools and our students, and we definitely intend to make the best use of it and to spend those funds. And when we're looking at those areas that we're spending on, we're looking at the board has approved us utilizing those ESSER funds for making up for our state budget cuts, especially for health and safety, accelerating learning, looking at social emotional learning and how we're supporting our students in those areas, and other COVID-related responses and supports. And it's supporting our students as well as ensuring that our staff and our adults in our schools are also being supported.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, on the subject of ESSER funds, and my apologies, I have a neighbor upstairs that's redoing their floor. So if you hear some noise with my questions, I apologize for that. On the subject of ESSER funds, the paper had an editorial not too long ago, and I want to make sure that I'm quoting right. They said, as of May, federal data showed the DOE spent only 27% of the roughly $640 million of the ESSER funds available. About 183.6 million of that lapses in September of 2023. So that money is basically use it or lose it. Do you think that the department will be able to use it and use it in areas that are most needed according to the deadlines?
Yes, we'll definitely make use of those funds. We did have approval for the most current ESSER funding allocation in January to use those funds. And as I shared, those areas that I kind of talked about that we're focusing on. In addition, we're looking at multiple areas of support that schools have needed, looking at distance learning equipment, laptops, hotspots to provide distance learning, especially for our rural communities. Our schools have been identifying those areas, looking at distance learning training, resources to support schools, our credit recovery programs, hiring of school counselors, social workers, and just general health and safety supplies like air purifiers for classrooms and other safety equipment that our schools have identified as needs. So recent DOE feedback, that in US DOE did send some representatives out of the U.S. Secretary of Education's office to come and visit Hawaii with some of their partners from Puerto Rico. And I did ask, is that what's happening nationally? And they did share, USDOE did share with us that across the country, states are a little delayed in spending those ESSER funding, especially in the areas of personnel. I think all areas within our state experiencing difficulty with hiring of personnel. The department is experiencing that too. I have no doubt, though, that as we continue through this summer and through the next school year, we definitely will be leveraging those funds and accelerating our spending to meet the needs of our students. The board, as I shared, this month approved a request by us to use $76 million of ESER 2 and ESER 3 funding to offset our budget shortfalls, that were cuts from last year. And so, we'll continue to publish a detailed monthly breakdown of all of our federal relief spending and balances on our website. And so if people are interested in seeing, the spending rate, definitely they can see that on our the DOE website.
You mentioned one of the issues that many in the community are dealing with, and that's just staffing shortages, and that compounds with what we already were seeing with teacher shortages within the islands. How serious of a problem is the teacher shortage right now in Hawaii? Is this something that you anticipate will be ongoing? Is, heading into next school year, is it worse than maybe it was in the past few years? What degree of alert should we be on with teacher shortages and this ongoing problem for our schools?
Our department, with the support of the board and our legislators, have worked to address teacher recruitment and retention in a number of ways. We definitely, we have a shortage, but we're also working to address it, though. Our latest official numbers, if I remember correctly, also certificated teachers show a fill rate of about 94% in non-special education teacher positions. For special education, our fill rate has increased from 84% in 2019 to about 90%, the previous year and last year, thanks in large part to our teacher shortage differentials, which definitely has helped. The differentials are aimed to address teacher vacancies and retention in a number of most difficult to fill areas, which include special education, hard to staff geographical locations, as well as Hawaiian immersion. All three categories of the first year of pay differentials, we saw an overall increase in licensed teachers and a decrease in non-licensed teachers and vacancies. Through our teacher education coordinating committee, which the members have worked very hard. We continue to work closely with our higher education partners on teacher preparation programs, including the University of Hawaii campuses, Chaminade, HPU, BYU Hawaii, and Teach for America. We're also working with the American Institute for Research to analyze our teacher shortages related to equity and diversity in our classrooms, looking at geographically hard to fill areas and really identifying specific strategies that we can utilize to meet the unique needs of teachers in those areas. Office of Talent Management is continuing its efforts to actively recruit new teachers, both in Hawaii and across the country. Anyone interested in teaching in Hawaii can visit our recruitment website at teachinhawaii.org. They also have an opportunity to engage with our ambassadors on that site, and our ambassadors are practicing classroom teachers that those that are interested in moving to Hawaii, or they're currently in Hawaii, that want to explore a very rewarding career field in teaching and working with our youth. They can talk with our ambassadors and learn more about what the rewarding experiences are about, to teach in Hawaii. We definitely need great teachers and individuals that are committed to improving our public school system. And I can tell you, as a former teacher, there is nothing better and more rewarding than to see that sparkle in a child's eye as you're teaching them a concept and they grasp what you're talking about, both at the elementary, middle, and high school. Precious, and so we encourage anyone interested in joining the Hawaii DOE and our teacher ranks to please jump on our website, because we need you.
Well, can I ask you, those fill rate percentages that you were laying out at the beginning, I don't really know what those percentages actually mean. So can you explain what that actually means? And also, when we're talking about a teacher shortage, what's the actual number? How many teachers do we really need?
When I was talking about that fill rate, it's what is the average percentage that we're able to fill in our full-time positions. So we're looking at about 94% of our certificated teachers at non-special education, and we're at about 90% for our special education teachers. So that difference is kind of where our shortage is right now. I can get those exact numbers. I don't have them off the top of my head right now, but we do need teachers. We need individuals who are committed to support our youth, that are ready to engage, especially in our hard-to-fill areas. Individuals that are committed to making a difference, and helping as we grow our educational system and provide those things that are necessary for our students. We also help to support and grow our communities. So I can get those numbers to you. Sorry, I don't have them off the top of my head right now, though.
Well, one of the things that has evolved during this time of COVID-19 has been that distance learning that you spoke of, that you could potentially be using funds to help increase in buying laptops and support. I'm wondering how you see the future of distance learning being incorporated into the traditional style that we saw before the pandemic. I mean, we know many of kids were, using distance learning, of course, to stay connected. But now that schools are open, what do you think the future of distance learning looks like, and how is that going to continue to be an option for some students?
Our Office of Curriculum and Instructional Design stood up a distance learning program really quickly, at the beginning of this past school year. And, they worked really hard to secure teachers, to provide support on a statewide level for those students that needed distance learning support. Also, our complex areas, some of the complex areas stood up programs, as well as schools, and schools in partnership with each other. We're going to continue those efforts to address those needs for the students that choose to participate in distance learning. For me, though, I very much encourage and support, encourage our parents and our students. We have seen the impact, the positive impact of in-person learning, and what that has for our students, as they're able to attend school, connect with their peers, talk with their teachers, really get that one-to-one support in person. We found that is really important. Moving forward, there will be opportunities for our students to continue in the distance learning programs. It may be a hybrid type of situation that, we have distance learning currently prior to the pandemic, in areas through our Office of Curriculum Instructional Design for credit programs that students can engage in, but not full distance learning. Those are opportunities that students could take individual classes from. Definitely, the department is going to move forward with that. We're looking at expanding different types of opportunities and leveraging different distance learning platforms. We also have secured a learning management system now through the Office of Curriculum Instructional Design that will help us to provide those kinds of supports and curriculum for our students and those efforts. So definitely moving forward, looking at how we can leverage the expertise of our teachers that they've already implemented in moving forward and supporting our students.
I want to ask you about vaccines. I know it's not the Department of Education's call on this, but surely there are ongoing discussions about adding vaccination as a requirement for students. I'm just interested in what those discussions are like now that any child over the age of 6 months is eligible for a vaccination. What is the discussion happening in terms of adding COVID-19 to the slate of other vaccinations that are required to participate in DOE activities?
Adding the COVID-19 vaccinations, once it's fully approved, to the list of required immunizations for students to attend our public schools is something that actually the State Department of Health has authority over. There have been some very preliminary discussions, but I don't believe that there's any formal process that has been started yet. We encourage all of our students, though, to be up to date with their latest vaccinations to help protect not only themselves, but those around them. So those discussions will be starting. The Department of Health has the overall authority, though, on requiring um, vaccinations for our schools.
We have a question that I'd like to bring in, asking why isn't the DOE implementing a test to stay program in lieu of the continued masking if the goal is to keep students in the classroom? Beyond just the required mask wearing, is there any sort of other alternatives that the department is looking at? Maybe a test to stay program or some other forms that might allow for the removal of the mask policy that is currently in place right now?
Well, from the department's perspective, we have we've ordered a number of home test kits that students can take home to test themselves with their parents, to test at home to see that they're either positive or hopefully COVID negative, and then follow those requirements that we've put in place. That if a student is positive, they should stay home, for those 5 days, and then return to school masking for the next 5 days. And that's basically the process that we've been using. We want to ensure that we keep all of our students safe, and that that testing is very important for us. Other options, we do still, I believe, have Operation Expanded Testing at schools. So students could participate in that program, and those are vendors that will come to school and help and support and take tests for students that way. The strategy we're using right now, though, is to provide those home test kits for our students to use with their families to encourage regular testing, utilizing the home test kits.
I know I want to move on from masking because we have a bunch of other topics to get to, but when I look at the comments, just to summarize, it's basically the number one topic that is in there from the people who are watching right now. I'm sure that when you go out into the community, it must be conversations that you are having on a regular basis too. What do you say to these parents who are so frustrated given that the mask requirement has been removed virtually everywhere else in our community, at least as a mandatory measure, as opposed to allowing parents to have their kids wear a mask if they want to and not wear one if they don't?
One of the things that's really important, for us is to ensure that, again, as I shared earlier, our students are safe in school and they're able to stay in school in person. And while there may be optional masking for outside within our communities, within schools, again, working together with the Department of Health, at least throughout this summer and possibly into the next school year, we're making our decisions based on what we believe will keep our students safe. So while I understand that there may be individuals that want the masks removed indoors in our classrooms, as of right now, we're going to keep that masking requirement indoors in our classroom for our students. It's important that we're able to do that to keep our students in school, because if we were to remove those, if we're to make masking optional in school, then the quarantining requirement changes for our students, and as close contacts, they will need to quarantine. Where if they're so keeping those masks, that masking requirement on in campus, in the classroom, helps to keep our students in school in person.
Speaking of student safety, the conversation obviously throughout the nation has been that on protecting students from school-wide shootings and gun violence that, of course, has happened in Uvalde, Texas, that has been brought back to the national spotlight, and the conversation about student safety regarding guns in our schools and on campuses. Has the department thought about any sort of specific training or any sort of implementation of a program with regards to gun violence and protecting students through these sort of safety drills that we are seeing many on the mainland, embarking on in order to help test and keep, have these drills in order to keep students safe. What is the department's position on this, and how are you folks involving this in the conversation of student safety?
Well, in Hawaii, we do have all of our schools. We have our emergency preparation, our preparedness plans and programs in place. They're designed to keep our schools safe and prepared to and respond to different kinds of situations that happen in school. All of our schools are required to have emergency action plans. Our schools perform drills, including lockdown, shelter in place, evacuation, and fire drills every year. And I know as a former principal, our schools also have active safety committees that each school also has to discuss various safety issues. And our committees report up to our complex area superintendents at least quarterly. And those are to address issues that might come up throughout the school year so that we can be proactive. We all know that we can continue to improve in all of these areas. We continue to monitor national trends, work with our partners in law enforcement, continue to implement various safety initiatives to mitigate security challenges associated with our open campuses in Hawaii. It includes vulnerability assessments that we're doing to evaluate the risks on any campus, and each campus is different, and within each community, and so those vulnerability assessment helps us to tailor to the needs of each school. We also provide threat response training to schools and complex areas, and we've dedicated resources to increase surveillance and security at schools. In addition to security training, we also know it's crucial to ensure our school staff are properly trained when it comes to the emotional well-being of our students. We do have training for that. We continue to expand on different professional development opportunities for trauma-informed education and social-emotional learning to ensure that our students feel safe and are supported at schools. In terms of specific to what you had asked, Ryan, with the guns, and those things, those responses, those options are available to schools, should they request them.
Do you think, though, there should be a system-wide active shooter training specific to this particular threat, as opposed to just a sort of widespread emergency drill that you're talking about, which, of course, for fires or other incidents is very necessary. But should there be something specific to an active shooter on campus?
Definitely, that's something we're taking a look at. We're working with our partners in law enforcement to do those assessments. Currently, those options are available for schools should they request them. We are looking at, though, doing an assessment to see whether those decisions need to be made in the near future.
Just to clarify, if there was a school that requests a specific active shooter training, that is available to the school, that would have to be determined by the principal. Is that what you're saying?
Currently, yes, there are options available for schools to request that, and so we are working with our partners to provide that kind of training to meet those requests.
Unfortunately, we're almost out of time, but I just want to get your final thoughts. School's starting already August 1, which is hard to believe. We are already so close to that. How are you feeling about the readiness of our kids? We know there was a lot of learning loss throughout the pandemic with so many in-person days missed, and some kids did better on Zoom and other platforms than others. So what is your thought going into the school year about student readiness and where we are as a system?
Yunji, you're right. It seems like school just ended. It seems like just yesterday, I was attending the graduation commencement ceremonies and, honoring our seniors that graduated class of 2022. I'm so proud of them and the work that we continue to do with our students who are going to be returning back in school. Just to share, 26% of our seniors this year graduated with honors, with academics, CT or STEM honors. And That's a tribute to the work that our teachers, our counselors, um, and our administrators do, and staff, support staff, do in supporting our schools and our students in school. I'm continue to be very confident that as we move forward into the next school year, we're going to be continue to engage our students, leveraging the assessments that we're taking, with in relation to our academic as well as our SEL social emotional assessments, taking that data and really helping to and supporting our students uh, in moving forward, both academically and social emotionally. Uh, the pandemic did impact our student learning. I'm confident, though, that as we show initial gains at the end of this school year, and as we move into next school year, with the support of our teachers and those in the schools, as well as those stakeholders, external stakeholders, our community, industry, our legislative partners, the media, will continue to do all that we can to help support our students and move forward. I'm really excited. I really am. I know that all of us working together will definitely be able to meet the needs of our students and help to continue to accelerate that learning, and make those connections. So I just ask for everyone to continue to support public education and the work that we're doing, because it definitely is important to support our kids.
All right, Superintendent Keith Hayashi joining us on this Wednesday morning. Thanks so much for the update, and we look forward to more conversations in the future. Mahalo.
Thank you, G. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Well, we see all of your comments. We know a lot of the conversation this morning, Ryan, revolved around masks because that's what so many of the viewers wanted to know. The superintendent basically saying that if they take away the mask requirement, that changes the exposure protocols. And so up until this point, in partnership with the Department of Health, they have chosen to keep masking indoors in schools. We know that there are a lot of parents who are frustrated by that. But he says that is really the only way that they can not have to quarantine these kids if and when there's an exposure in the classroom. And then we also talked about, whether or not they would eventually make the vaccine mandatory as part of attending the Department of Education facilities. And he said that both of those decisions, really rest with the Department of Health. Good to know that we have Dr. Libby Char joining us on Friday, and we will be talking about these same subjects with her.
Yeah, looking forward to having that conversation with Dr. Char and getting an update on where we are as a state with COVID-19, as well as also getting an update on monkeypox and its prevalence here in the islands as well. We thank you all for being a part of this conversation. If you missed any part of today's conversation with the superintendent, you can go back and watch the rebroadcast of this program or catch it wherever you get your podcast from, because those will be streaming there as well. We look forward to seeing you right back here on Friday for another episode of Spotlight Hawaii. Until then, take care and aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.